Millionaire visits. Son's grave and finds an Italian woman crying with a young girl. Eleanor Thompson held the white flowers with trembling hands as she walked along the stone path she knew by heart. For 2.5 years, that route had become part of her weekly routine, a silent ritual of grief that never faded. Then, as she approached Richard's grave, she stopped. There was someone there. A young brunette was kneeling before the headstone, her shoulders shaking with deep sobs. In her arms, a small girl with curly blonde hair looked around with curious blue eyes. The child couldn't have been more than 2 years old and wore a little yellow dress that contrasted with the heavy atmosphere of the place. Eleanor felt her heart tighten in a different way. Who were those two? Why were they crying in front of her son's grave? The young woman was speaking in a language Eleanor didn't fully understand, but she recognized the sound of Italian. She held an old photograph against her chest and alternated between whispering incomprehensible words and kissing the top of the girl's head. Eleanor took a few more steps, and the dry leaves crackled under her shoes. The young woman turned her face abruptly, her eyes red and swollen from crying meeting hers. For a moment they stood frozen, sizing each other up. "Who are you?" Eleanor asked, her voice coming out harsher than she intended. The Italian woman stood up quickly, adjusting the child on her hip. She said something quickly in Italian, the words tumbling over each other with the evident panic in her voice. "I don't understand," Eleanor said, taking a step forward. "Please, wait. Who are you? Why are you at my son's grave?" But the young woman was already backing away, her eyes wide like those of a frightened animal. She spun on her heels and began to run along the narrow path between the headstones, the girl bouncing in her arms. "Wait!" Eleanor shouted, but her 68-year-old legs couldn't keep up with the desperate run of the young woman. It was then that something fell from the Italian woman's pocket. A white embroidered handkerchief landed softly on the trimmed grass. Eleanor walked over to it, bent down with difficulty and picked up the delicate fabric. She turned it over in her fingers and felt the air leave her lungs. The initials embroidered in navy blue were unmistakable. R.T. Richard Thompson. That was the handkerchief she had given her son during the last Christmas they spent together. She remembered buying it at an expensive store in the mall with the initials custom made. Richard had laughed, saying no one used cloth handkerchiefs these days, but he promised to keep it in a drawer. How did that Italian woman have her son's handkerchief? Eleanor looked at the empty path where the young woman had disappeared, then at Richard's grave. The photo that used to be impeccable now had a lipstick mark, as if it had been kissed, and there were fresh flowers there, not the ones she had brought, but a bouquet of white lilies, still with the morning dew. She approached the headstone on unsteady legs and read, for the 1000th time, the words engraved on the marble, "Richard Thompson, beloved son, his light continues to shine in our hearts." Eleanor touched the cold stone and closed her eyes. Richard was only 32 years old when the accident happened. She still remembered the call from the hospital, the desperate rush through New York City traffic, arriving too late. But who was that Italian woman? And the girl? Eleanor picked up her phone with trembling hands and called the only number she trusted completely. "Julia, it's me. I need you to come to the cemetery now. I found—" She paused, not knowing how to explain. "I found something strange. Someone strange." Julia Peterson had been her best friend for 40 years. If there was anyone who could help her understand what was happening, it was her. While she waited, Eleanor sat on the stone bench near the grave and examined the handkerchief again. The fabric was well cared for, without stains or tears, but clearly used. There was even a soft perfume lingering on it, something floral she didn't recognize. The fresh flowers on the grave also intrigued her. Eleanor came every Thursday morning, always at the same time. It was Tuesday. Who else was visiting Richard's grave? And why? When Julia arrived 20 minutes later, she found Eleanor still sitting, the handkerchief clutched between her fingers. "What happened?" Julia asked, sitting beside her friend. "You're pale." Eleanor told her everything. The young Italian woman, the little blonde girl, the desperate escape, the handkerchief with Richard's initials. "Do you think she knew your son?" Julia asked, taking the handkerchief and examining it. I don't know. Richard never mentioned any Italian woman. He traveled to Europe a few times for business, but always alone. Or at least, that's what I thought. Eleanor felt her voice falter. Julia, that little girl. She had such blue eyes, and Richard had blue eyes, and that way of tilting her little head to the side, just like Richard used to do when he was small. Julia looked at her friend with concern. Are you suggesting that— I don't know what I'm suggesting, Eleanor interrupted, standing up abruptly. But I need to find out who they are. I need to understand what's going on. Eleanor, maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe she went to the wrong grave, or— She knew exactly where she was, Eleanor cut in. And she was talking to Richard. I heard his name. She kept saying, Richard, Richard, between sobs. The two women fell silent for a moment, the weight of the discovery hanging between them. What are you going to do? Julia finally asked. I'm coming back here tomorrow, and the next day. As many times as necessary until I find her again, Eleanor replied, determination clear in her voice. She comes back here, Julia. The flowers prove it. And when she comes back, I'll be waiting. That night, Eleanor could barely sleep. The big house in the Upper East Side, which had always been a symbol of her success as a businesswoman, seemed even emptier than usual. She walked through the silent rooms, remembering when Richard was a child, and filled those spaces with laughter and mess. She entered his room, kept exactly as it was on the day of the accident, the bed made, the business books on the shelf, the photos on the wall. There was one from his last birthday, smiling next to his mother as he blew out the candles. 32 years old, so young, so full of plans and dreams. Eleanor sat on the bed and hugged Richard's pillow, smelling the already faded scent of his cologne. She cried as she hadn't cried in months, letting the pain come in waves that shook her completely. When she finally managed to pull herself together, it was already the middle of the night. She walked to the window and looked out at the moonlit garden. That's when she saw on Richard's desk a photo she had never noticed before. It was half hidden behind the computer. Eleanor picked up the photo and sat down again, holding it closer to the lamplight. It was Richard, but different. Younger, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, he was somewhere that looked European, a square with old fountains in the background, and next to him, with her head resting on his shoulder, was a young brunette smiling at the camera. Eleanor's heart stopped. It was her, the Italian woman from the cemetery. With trembling hands, Eleanor turned the photo over. There was something handwritten, in writing she didn't recognize. Rome, Spring 2021. With my love. 2021. 4 years ago. Richard had gone to Italy that year for a business conference. He stayed there for 3 months, saying he was taking the opportunity to see the country and make important contacts. He called every week, always excited, telling her about the cities he visited, the food, the culture. But he never mentioned a girlfriend. He never said he had fallen in love. Why? Why would Richard hide something like that from her? Eleanor tried to recall that time. Richard had returned from Italy quieter, more thoughtful. She attributed it to maturity, to the personal growth that travel always brings. He threw himself headfirst into the family business, taking on more responsibilities in the construction company she had built from scratch. There were a few times when she caught him looking at his phone with a melancholy expression, but when she asked, he would smile and say it was nothing. Eleanor always respected her son's privacy. Now she wondered if she should have insisted more. The next morning, Eleanor was back at the cemetery before 7 o'clock. She sat on the same stone bench and waited. The hours passed slowly. Other visitors came and went, bringing flowers, cleaning graves, praying silently. The Italian woman didn't appear. Eleanor returned the next day, and the next. Always at the same time, always hoping to see that young brunette woman and the little girl in the yellow dress again. On the 4th day, when she was about to give up and go home, she heard it, that soft voice speaking Italian. Eleanor rose quickly from the bench, her heart racing. There she was, kneeling before Richard's grave again, this time alone, without the little girl. She wore a simple coat and carried only a single white rose. Eleanor approached slowly, trying not to startle her again. Please don't run away, she said, her voice firm but not threatening. I just want to talk. I need to understand. The young woman lifted her face. Up close, Eleanor could see her features better. She must have been in her early 20s, with deep brown eyes and an expression of sadness that seemed permanent. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her clothes, although clean, were worn. Are you the mamma? The Italian woman asked in heavily accented English. The mamma of Richard? Eleanor nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Io sono Gabriella, the young woman continued, tears beginning to stream again. I loved Richard. She stopped, searching for the right words in English. How do you say, boyfriend and girlfriend, 4 years ago, in Rome. I know, Eleanor said softly, taking the photo from her purse pocket. I found this in his room. Gabriella took the photo with trembling hands. A sob escaped her lips. He promised to come back, she said, her voice breaking. He said he needed to sort things out here, with the family, with work, but that he would return to me. And I waited. I waited so long. Eleanor felt her legs weaken and sat on the bench again. Gabriella joined her, keeping a respectful distance. When he stopped answering my messages, I thought he had changed his mind. That he didn't love me anymore, Gabriella continued, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. But I was pregnant. I tried calling, writing, but nothing. Then, are you saying you have his child? Eleanor interrupted, her voice louder than she intended. A daughter, Gabriella corrected, her face lighting up for a brief moment despite the tears. Sophia, she's 2 years old. She's just like her father. The same blue eyes, the same smile. Eleanor's world spun. A granddaughter. She had a granddaughter. But why are you here? How did you find out that he... Gabriella lowered her head. It took me a long time to find him. I didn't know his full last name, just Richard from New York City. I searched for a long time. It was only when a friend managed to track him down through social media that I found out. But when I found him, she didn't need to finish the sentence. Eleanor understood. You found out he was gone. Gabriella nodded, tears falling freely now. I saved money for months. I sold everything I had. I worked 3 different jobs, all to bring Sophia here, to show her where her father is, so she could meet his family, even if it's too late. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Eleanor looked at the young Italian woman beside her. Gabriella was too thin, with the appearance of someone who hadn't had a decent meal in a long time. Her clothes were simple and patched in some places, the shoes worn out. And yet there was a dignity in her posture, a quiet strength that touched something in Eleanor. Where is the girl now, Sophia? Eleanor asked. With a lady who lives at the boarding house where we're staying. She takes care of Sophia when I need to go out to work. You're working here, in the United States? Gabriella gave a sad smile. I wash dishes at an Italian restaurant. At least I can speak my language there. And I clean offices at night. I need to pay for the boarding house and buy food for Sophia. Eleanor felt her heart tighten. That young woman had crossed an ocean, alone with a small child, working humble jobs, all for love of a man who was no longer here. Come with me, Eleanor said suddenly, surprising herself. Cosa? Come to my home. Bring Sophia. We need to talk properly. And Eleanor's voice faltered. I need to meet my granddaughter. Gabriella looked at her with suspicion and hope mixed. Why? You don't know me. You don't know if I'm telling the truth. No, Eleanor admitted, but my son kept your photo for 4 years, and you have the scarf I gave him, and there's something in your eyes. A sincerity that can't be faked. She reached out her hand to Gabriella. Besides, if that girl is really my Richard's daughter, she's my granddaughter, and I've already lost too much time not knowing she existed. Gabriella hesitated for a long moment before taking Eleanor's hand. Her grip was firm despite trembling hands. Okay, she said finally, but only if you promise one thing. What? Don't try to take Sophia away from me. She's all I have left of him." Eleanor felt tears burning her eyes. "I promise. I just want to meet her. Get to know both of you." They arranged to meet the next day. Eleanor gave her card with the address and her phone number, and Gabriella carefully put it in her pocket as if it were a treasure. When Eleanor arrived home that afternoon, she immediately called Julia and told her everything. "Are you sure about this?" Julia asked, clear concern in her voice. "Eleanor, you barely know this young woman. What if it's a scam? What if she's lying about everything?" "I know it sounds impulsive," Eleanor admitted, pacing back and forth in her office. "But Julia, you should have seen the way she talked about Richard. The pain in her eyes. That wasn't acting. People can be good actors, especially when money is involved." "She didn't ask for money," Eleanor retorted. "In fact, she didn't even know who I was until today. If she were after money, she would have come to me much sooner." Julia sighed on the other end of the line. "Okay, but at least do a DNA test to be sure for Richard." Eleanor agreed. It was the least she owed her son. The next morning, Eleanor woke up earlier than usual. She hadn't slept well, her mind full of thoughts about what the day would bring. She prepared the house, asking the maid to tidy the guest room and make a special lunch. Gabriella arrived promptly at 11 o'clock, holding Sophia's hand. The girl wore the same yellow dress as when Eleanor first saw her, but now she could see her better in the clear morning light. And what she saw took her breath away. Sophia was the female version of Richard as a child. The same blonde curls, the same bright blue eyes, the same dimple in her chin when she smiled. Even the way she looked around with curiosity was just like her son. "Buongiorno," Gabriella said timidly, still at the entrance. Sophia hid behind her mother's legs, watching Eleanor cautiously. "Good morning," Eleanor replied, forcing herself not to cry. "Please come in. This is your home now." They entered slowly. Sophia stared at the crystal chandelier in the hall with wide eyes, pointing and saying something in Italian to her mother. "She said it looks like a princess castle," Gabriella translated with a shy smile. Eleanor knelt in front of Sophia, coming down to the little girl's eye level. "Hello, Sophia," she said softly. "I'm your nonna, your grandmother." Sophia tilted her head to the side, studying Eleanor. Then, to everyone's surprise, she reached out her tiny hand and touched Eleanor's face, her soft little fingers tracing the laugh lines around the woman's eyes. "Bella," Sophia said, smiling. Eleanor felt the tears fall freely now. She took Sophia's little hand and kissed it gently. "You are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," she whispered. They spent the morning getting to know each other. Eleanor showed Gabriella and Sophia around the house, who were amazed by the garden where there was an old dollhouse that had been Richard's as a child, now adapted as a small playhouse. Sophia immediately ran there, and Eleanor followed, laughing for the first time in so long at the sight of the little girl's joy exploring every corner. "She never had a garden to play in," Gabriella said softly, standing beside Eleanor. "We lived in a small room. There's barely space for a bed." Eleanor looked at the young woman beside her. "Tell me about you and Richard. Tell me everything." They sat in the garden while Sophia played, and Gabriella began her story. "I worked at a cafe in Rome. Richard came in one day, lost, looking for a hotel. I helped him, and he came back the next day to thank me. And the next day. And the next." She smiled at the memory. "He said it was to learn Italian, but I knew it was an excuse." "And you fell in love," Eleanor finished. "Yes. Quickly. He was different from all the men I knew, kind, funny, ambitious, but also a dreamer. We spent hours talking about everything. He told me about you, about how you built a company from scratch, about how he admired your strength." Eleanor felt a lump in her throat. "He talked about me?" "All the time. You were his hero. He wanted to make you proud, prove he was worthy of everything you built." "But then why didn't he ever tell me about you?" Gabriella was quiet for a moment. "He was afraid. He said you always dreamed he would marry someone from the same social level, someone who could help with the business. And I was just a waitress. No formal education, no money, nothing to offer but my love." Eleanor closed her eyes, feeling the guilt weigh on her. There had been conversations over the years, casual comments about Richard finding someone suitable, someone who understood their world. She never thought those words could drive her son to hide his happiness from her. "I was a fool," she whispered, "a proud fool who put status above her own son's happiness." "No," Gabriella said firmly. "Richard didn't think that. He just wanted to be sure. He wanted to establish himself financially first, prove he could take care of me without depending on you. We planned to get married as soon as he returned." But he didn't return. No, the messages became less frequent. He said he was busy with the company, that there were problems he needed to solve. I understood, or tried to understand. But then I found out I was pregnant. Gabriella touched her belly unconsciously, as if she could still feel Sophia there. I tried to tell him. I called many times, sent messages. He replied saying he was in important meetings, that he would talk to me soon. But that soon never came until one day he just stopped responding. "And you didn't try to come here before?" "I didn't have money for the ticket, and I was pregnant, alone. My family disowned me when they found out I was expecting a child from a foreigner. I had to work until the last day before Sophia was born. And then, taking care of a baby alone, working to survive. There was no time or money to come after him." Eleanor took Gabriella's hand. "I'm sorry. For everything you went through, for Richard not being there, for me not knowing." "You didn't know," Gabriella said simply. "Nobody knew. Until I managed to track him down and found out that—" She didn't finish, but she didn't need to. The two women fell silent, watching Sophia play, each lost in her own thoughts about the man they both loved and lost. Lunch was an eye-opening experience. Sophia ate with appetite, trying everything offered to her. It was obvious the girl wasn't used to hearty meals. She looked at each dish with admiration as if they were treasures. "She really enjoys eating," Gabriella explained with an embarrassed smile. "I try to give her the best I can, but sometimes—" "You don't need to explain," Eleanor interrupted gently. "I know how hard it is. I went through tough times too when I was building my business and raising Richard alone. Richard told me his father left when he was a baby. Yes, I was 22 years old with an infant and no prospects, but I had determination. I started by selling construction materials from a small stall at the market. I grew slowly, reinvesting every penny. It took 30 years to build the company I have today." Gabriella looked at Eleanor with renewed admiration. "Richard was right, you're amazing." After lunch, Eleanor suggested something she'd been thinking about since she woke up. "Gabriella, I need to be honest with you. I'd like to do a DNA test. Not because I doubt your word, but because it's important to be certain," Gabriella completed without seeming offended. "I understand. I'll take the test. I have nothing to hide." "Thank you," Eleanor said, relieved. "I know a private lab that can do this discreetly and have the results in a few days. They scheduled to do the collection the next day. Meanwhile, Eleanor insisted that Gabriella and Sophia stay for dinner. "But I need to work tonight," Gabriella protested. "One night won't make a difference, please. Let me have this time with my granddaughter, with both of you." Gabriella hesitated, but Sophia's expression, clearly happy to be there, convinced her. That night was magical. Eleanor put on a children's movie for Sophia to watch, and the girl was delighted. Gabriella sat beside her daughter on the large sofa, and Eleanor on the other side. It was as if they were a family, even if temporarily. Later, when Sophia fell asleep in Eleanor's lap, exhausted from all the excitement, Gabriella got up to carry her. "Let her stay here a little longer," Eleanor whispered. "It's been so long since I've held a child like this." Gabriella sat back down, and the two women fell silent, just watching Sophia sleep. "She looks so peaceful," Eleanor finally said. "So innocent. She hardly knows the pain the world can bring." "I try to protect her," Gabriella said, "from everything. From poverty, from the pain of not having a father, from loneliness, but sometimes I feel it's not enough." "You're doing more than enough. She's clearly loved. You can see it in every look she gives you, in every smile. You're a wonderful mother, Gabriella." Gabriella wiped away a tear that escaped. "Thank you. No one has ever told me that before." Eleanor looked at the young woman and saw not just her granddaughter's mother, but someone who faced immense challenges with courage and dignity. "When the DNA results come back," Eleanor said carefully, "and I know they'll confirm what my heart already knows, I'd like to make a proposal." "What proposal?" "I want you to live here, with me. This house is too big for one person, and Sophia deserves to have a garden to play in, her own room, stability." "I can't accept charity," Gabriella said quickly, pride evident in her voice. "It's not charity," Eleanor retorted firmly. "It's family taking care of family. Besides, I have a job proposal for you." "A job?" "Yes. I've seen how you speak Italian, English, and I assume Portuguese too. The company has international contracts. I need a translator. Someone who can help me with European clients. The job would pay well, and you'd have flexible hours to take care of Sophia." Gabriella looked at her with tears in her eyes. "Why are you doing this? You barely know me." "Because I saw my son in you today," Eleanor said simply. "The same determination, the same strength, the same kind heart. And because my granddaughter deserves to have the best life possible. And her mother does too." Gabriella covered her face with her hands and cried. Eleanor reached out and pulled her into an awkward hug, with Sophia still sleeping between them. "Thank you," Gabriella whispered between sobs. "Thank you for not judging me, for believing in me." "Thank you for bringing light back into my life," Eleanor replied, her own voice choked, "for giving me a reason to smile again." That night, Gabriella and Sophia stayed in the guest room. Eleanor couldn't sleep, spending hours awake thinking about how life could change so quickly. 2 days ago, she was a lonely woman visiting her son's grave. Now she had a granddaughter and perhaps a new family. But a part of her was still afraid that the test would come back negative, afraid that all of this was temporary, afraid of getting attached and then losing again. The next day they went to the lab. The process was quick and painless. Sophia even found it funny when they took a sample from her mouth with a swab. "The results will be ready in 3 days," the technician informed them. 3 days, that felt like 3 years to Eleanor. She invited Gabriella and Sophia to stay at her house during that time, and the Italian, after much hesitation, accepted. They were 3 strange and wonderful days. Sophia quickly adapted to the big house, exploring every room with insatiable curiosity. Gabriella helped Eleanor in the garden, showing a natural talent for taking care of plants. "My nonna had a small garden in Italy," she explained while watering the flowers. "I spent hours there with her when I was a child. It was my favorite place in the world." "Do you miss it? Italy?" Eleanor asked. "Sometimes, but there's nothing for me there. My family rejected me. My friends moved on with their lives. Here at least I have—" She stopped, correcting herself. "Here I have Sophia, and that's enough." Eleanor noticed the pause, the near admission that she had Eleanor now too, but respected the young woman's silence. They were still getting to know each other, building trust. These things took time. On the 3rd night, Sophia woke up crying from a nightmare. Eleanor heard the sounds coming from the guest room and went to check. She found Gabriella rocking her daughter, singing a lullaby in Italian. "Is everything okay?" Eleanor whispered from the doorway. "She has nightmares sometimes," Gabriella explained. Ever since she found out about her father. She doesn't fully understand, of course. She's too young, but she feels the absence of someone she never knew." Eleanor entered the room and sat on the edge of the bed. "May I?" she asked, holding out her arms. Gabriella hesitated for only a second before passing Sophia to Eleanor. The girl immediately settled against her grandmother's chest, her sobs subsiding. "Shh," Eleanor murmured, stroking Sophia's blonde curls. "It's all right, my dear. You're safe." She began to hum the same lullaby she used to sing to Richard. She hadn't sung it in years, but the melody came back naturally, as if she had never stopped. Sophia had completely calmed down, her breathing becoming regular and deep. But Eleanor continued holding her, unable to let go. "She likes you," Gabriella said softly. "I wish I had met her earlier," Eleanor admitted. "I wish I had been there when she was born, when she took her first steps, when she said her first word." It's not too late, Gabriella said. You can be here for everything that comes next. Eleanor looked at the young woman with gratitude. Gabriella could easily have held a grudge, blamed Eleanor for Richard's absence for the hardship she faced alone. But instead, she offered a chance at redemption, an opportunity to be the grandmother Sophia deserved. Gabriella, Eleanor said carefully, regardless of what the test shows, I would like you both to stay. I feel a connection with you two, a connection that goes beyond DNA or blood. But what if Sophia isn't Richard's granddaughter? Gabriella asked, vulnerability clear in her voice. Then she's the daughter of someone you loved, and that's enough for me. But my heart says she is his. I can see Richard in every expression of hers. That night, the three of them slept together in the large bed in the guest room, Sophia safe between two women who, in different ways, loved her deeply. When the third day finally arrived, and the lab called saying the results were ready, Eleanor felt her stomach churn. Julia insisted on going with them for support. Whatever the result, Julia said as they drove to the lab, you will handle it. I know, Eleanor replied, but her voice didn't sound convincing even to herself. Gabriella was quiet in the back seat, holding Sophia in her lap. The girl was cheerful, unaware of the tension filling the car. At the clinic, they were taken to a private room where the doctor waited with a sealed envelope. Mrs. Thompson, the doctor began, the results are here. Would you like to open it alone or— You can open it, Eleanor interrupted, her voice firmer than she expected. I want everyone to hear at the same time. The doctor opened the envelope and took out the papers. Her eyes quickly scanned the pages before smiling. According to the DNA test, there is a 99.99% probability that Eleanor Thompson is the biological grandmother of Sophia Romano. The test confirms a genetic match consistent with this relationship. Eleanor felt her legs give way. Julia held her by the arm, preventing her from falling. Gabriella let out a sigh that seemed to have been held for years. She is my granddaughter, Eleanor whispered, tears flowing freely. She really is my granddaughter. Yes, the doctor confirmed, handing over the papers. There is no doubt. Eleanor looked at Sophia, who was trying to reach the photo frame on the doctor's desk, completely unaware of the monumental moment happening around her. Sophia, Eleanor called softly. The girl turned to her with those bright blue eyes. Do you know who I am? Nonna, Sophia replied with a smile. That's right, my dear, Eleanor said, scooping her into her arms and holding her close to her chest. I am your Nonna. Forever. Gabriella was crying now too, tears of relief and joy mixed together. Eleanor reached out an arm and pulled her into the hug as well. Thank you, Eleanor whispered to Gabriella. Thank you for bringing her to me. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for welcoming us, Gabriella replied, for giving us a chance. That evening, there was a small celebration at home. Julia brought a cake and champagne, and even though it was an ordinary Tuesday, it felt like New Year's Eve. To family, Julia toasted, raising her glass. To connections that transcend continents and circumstances. To love that finds a way always. To family, Eleanor and Gabriella repeated in unison. Sophia, with a plastic cup full of grape juice, also raised her glass, making everyone laugh. But as the night progressed and joy filled the house, Eleanor couldn't help but notice that Gabriella was quieter than usual. There was something in her eyes, a shadow that wasn't there before. When Julia left and Sophia was asleep, Eleanor found Gabriella on the porch, looking out at the dark garden. Is everything okay? Eleanor asked, sitting down beside her. Yes, Gabriella replied quickly, too quickly. Gabriella, we can build a relationship of trust, but for that we need to be honest with each other. What's wrong? The young woman stayed quiet for a long moment. I'm happy, she said finally, genuinely happy that Sophia has a grandmother, that she has family. But I'm also scared. Scared of what? That you might decide you can give Sophia a better life than I can. That you might try to take her from me. Gabriella's voice trembled. You have money, resources, power. I have nothing. If you wanted to fight for custody of her— Stop, Eleanor interrupted firmly, turning Gabriella to face her. Look at me. I promised you at the cemetery that I would never try to take Sophia from you. That promise still stands. It always will. But, no buts. You are her mother, Gabriella, and a wonderful mother. Nothing I do or offer changes that. I want to be part of your lives, but as a grandmother and a friend, not as a threat. Gabriella let out a sob and threw herself into Eleanor's arms. I'm sorry for doubting. It's just, I've lost so much in life. I can't lose Sophia too. You won't lose her, Eleanor assured her, stroking her back as she would a daughter's. I promise. They stayed like that for a long time, two women brought together by fate through love, loss, and renewed hope. In the following days, they established a new routine. Gabriella started working at Eleanor's company, first just a few hours a day to get used to it. She had a natural talent for languages and quickly became indispensable in the company's international communications. Sophia stayed with a babysitter during the hours Gabriella worked, but Eleanor made sure to spend at least a few hours every day with her granddaughter. They played in the garden, drew pictures together, and Eleanor read stories in English while Sophia listened attentively, absorbing the new language. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. One morning, 3 weeks after the DNA confirmation, Eleanor woke up with a strange feeling in her chest. It wasn't exactly pain, but an uncomfortable pressure. She ignored it, attributing it to age and the stress of the past weeks. But during breakfast, while watching Gabriella help Sophia eat her oatmeal, the pressure increased. Eleanor pressed her hand against her chest, trying to hide it. Eleanor, Gabriella noticed immediately. Are you okay? You're pale. I'm fine, Eleanor lied, forcing a smile. Just a little tired. But Gabriella wasn't convinced. She stood up and touched Eleanor's forehead, as she would with Sophia. You're sweating, and your breathing is uneven. I'm calling a doctor. That's not necessary, Eleanor protested. I just need to rest a bit. But before she could say anything more, the pressure in her chest intensified into a sharp pain that made her double over the table. Sophia started crying, frightened. Eleanor, Gabriella shouted, grabbing the phone. Don't move. I'm calling emergency services. Everything happened very quickly after that. The ambulance arrived, paramedics rushing, Gabriella explaining the symptoms in fast, agitated English while holding Sophia, who was crying desperately. At the hospital, after test, the doctor gave the diagnosis, a serious heart condition requiring immediate surgery. How did this happen? Gabriella asked the doctor, still holding Sophia. She was fine, she was doing so well. Sometimes these conditions are silent, the doctor explained. They can develop over years with no clear symptoms. You were lucky you noticed when you did. A few more hours and he didn't need to finish. Eleanor was in the hospital bed, connected to monitors and tubes. She seemed smaller somehow, more fragile. Gabriella approached, taking her hand. You're going to be okay, she said, trying to sound confident. The surgery is tomorrow and you will be fine. Gabriella, Eleanor said, her voice weak, I need you to promise me something. Anything. If something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong, Gabriella interrupted firmly. But if it does, Eleanor insisted, promise me you'll stay with the company, that you'll use the resources I left for you and Sophia, that you'll give her the life she deserves. Stop talking like that, Gabriella said, tears streaming down. You will recover and watch Sophia grow up. You'll see her go to school, celebrate birthdays, all the important milestones. I hope so, Eleanor admitted. But if... No, Gabriella cut in again, more firmly this time. I refuse to have this conversation. You are going to recover. Period. She kissed Eleanor's forehead and left the room, taking Sophia with her. In the hallway, she finally allowed the tears to fall freely. Julia arrived half an hour later, finding Gabriella sitting in a hallway chair. Sophia asleep in her lap, her eyes red from crying. How is she? Julia asked, sitting beside her. Scared. We both are, Gabriella admitted. Julia, I can't lose her too. Sophia has already lost her father. She can't lose her grandmother so soon. Eleanor is strong, Julia said, taking Gabriella's hand. stronger than she looks. She's survived a lot in her life. She'll survive this too." "How can you be so sure?" "Because now she has a reason to fight. She has you two. And I know she won't give up on her granddaughter easily." The surgery was scheduled for 6 the next morning. Gabriella spent the night at the hospital, not wanting to leave Eleanor alone. Sophia slept in a makeshift chair, covered with Gabriella's coat. At 5:30 they came for Eleanor. She was more lucid now, the medication having taken effect overnight. "Gabriella," she called as they came to take her, "take care of Sophia, and take care of yourself." "I will," Gabriella promised. "But you need to take care of yourself too. You need to come back to us." "I'll do my best." As they took Eleanor away, Gabriella woke Sophia, who immediately started crying when she saw her nonna being taken away. "Where is Nonna going?" she asked in her childish Italian mixed with English. "She's going for a treatment," Gabriella explained, trying to keep her voice calm. "So she can get well and play with you again." "Is she coming back?" "Yes, my dear. She is coming back." Gabriella prayed silently that she wasn't lying to her daughter. The next 5 hours were the longest of Gabriella's life. She paced back and forth in the waiting room, Sophia eventually falling asleep again from pure exhaustion. Julia brought coffee and tried to make conversation, but Gabriella could barely concentrate. Finally, at 11:15 in the morning, the surgeon appeared. Gabriella stood up so quickly she almost dropped Sophia. The surgery was a success, the doctor announced, and Gabriella felt her legs almost give way with relief. "It was more complicated than we expected, but we managed to correct the problem. She's in recovery now, and you'll be able to see her in a few hours." "Is she going to be okay?" Gabriella asked, her voice choked. "With proper rest and following the treatment, she will make a full recovery. But she will need intensive care in the coming weeks." "I will take care of her," Gabriella said immediately. "I will do whatever it takes." When they finally allowed Gabriella to see Eleanor, the lady was pale and weak, but her eyes lit up when she saw the young woman and Sophia. "Grandma!" Sophia shouted, wanting to run to the bed, but Gabriella held her back. "Gently, sweetheart. Grandma is recovering. We have to be gentle." Sophia approached slowly and, carefully, placed her little hand on Eleanor's hand. "Grandma, did it hurt?" "A little," Eleanor admitted with a faint smile. "But I'm better now. Because you're here." Gabriella approached the other side of the bed and took Eleanor's other hand. "You scared us," she said softly. "Please don't do that again." "I'll try not to," Eleanor promised. "I have too many plans for the future. Sophia's birthdays, first day of school, graduation. I can't miss any of it." "You won't miss it," Gabriella assured. "I'll make sure of that." Eleanor spent a week in the hospital. Gabriella visited her every day with Sophia, sometimes staying for hours just talking or sitting in comfortable silence. They learned more about each other's lives, sharing childhood stories, dreams, fears. "You know," Eleanor said one day, "I always wanted more children. But after Richard's father left, I never found someone I felt comfortable enough with to try again." "Richard never mentioned wanting siblings," Gabriella commented. "He didn't know I wanted more children. It always seemed ungrateful to talk about it when I had a wonderful son. But now," she looked at Sophia, who was drawing in a notebook Gabriella had brought, "now I feel like I have an expanded family. You and Sophia. It's like the missing pieces have finally fallen into place." "I feel that way too," Gabriella admitted. "My whole life I felt like a piece that didn't fit anywhere. Too much of a dreamer for my practical family. Too Italian for the United States. Too young to be a mother. But here with you, I feel like I've finally found my place." "Your place is with us," Eleanor said firmly. "It always will be." When Eleanor was finally discharged, she went home with strict instructions to rest. Gabriella took over her care completely, in addition to working and taking care of Sophia. It was exhausting, but she didn't complain. "You don't have to do everything," Eleanor protested one day when Gabriella brought her lunch in bed for the 3rd time. "We can hire a nurse." "No need," Gabriella said simply. "You would take care of me if it were the other way around. That's what family does." The word family touched something deep in Eleanor. It was the first time Gabriella had used the term so casually, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Yes, Eleanor agreed, blinking back tears. That's what family does. As Eleanor recovered, the household dynamics changed. Gabriella took on more responsibilities at the company, proving to be not only a competent translator, but also a skilled negotiator. She had a way of handling difficult clients that impressed even the most experienced employees. "She's a natural," Julia commented one day when visiting Eleanor, "has a business instinct that can't be taught." "Richard would be so proud of her," Eleanor said, watching through the window as Gabriella played with Sophia in the garden. "They would have been so happy together. Do you think they would have gotten married?" "I'm sure. Richard may have been afraid to tell me about her, but I knew him. When he loved with all his heart. He would have found a way to make it work." "Fate is cruel sometimes," Julia observed, "keeping them apart like that." "Or maybe fate has its own plan," Eleanor countered. "If Richard hadn't passed away, I would never have met Gabriella this way. I would never have had the chance to see Sophia grow up from such a young age. Maybe this is the universe giving us a second chance." A month after the surgery, Eleanor was strong enough to return to more normal routines. That's when she called Gabriella for a serious talk in her office. "I need to talk to you about something important," Eleanor began, gesturing for Gabriella to sit down. "Is everything okay?" Gabriella asked, immediate concern in her voice. "Your health?" "My health is great," Eleanor assured. "This is about something else, about my will." "Eleanor, I don't want to talk about... I need to talk about this," Eleanor interrupted firmly, "especially after the scare we had. Gabriella, you and Sophia are my family now, and I want to make sure you're protected no matter what happens. We don't need... It's not about what you need or don't need," Eleanor continued. "It's about what's right. Sophia is Richard's heir. By right, half the company should be hers. And you, as her mother and a key person in the company's operations, also deserve a share." "I didn't come here for money," Gabriella said, standing up abruptly. "You know that." "I know," Eleanor said calmly. "That's exactly why I'm doing this, because I know you're not here for the money but for the family. And that's exactly why you deserve to be recognized and legally protected." "But, Gabriella, please, let me do this. Let me make sure that you and Sophia will always have security, no matter what happens to me." Gabriella stayed quiet for a long moment before finally nodding. "Okay, if this is important to you." "It is," Eleanor confirmed. "Very important." They spent the next few weeks working with lawyers to reorganize the will and the company structure. It was a complicated process, but Eleanor was determined to do things right. During this time, something unexpected happened. Julia appeared one day with a worried expression. "Eleanor, I need to show you something," she said, picking up the tablet. "I found this on social media." It was an old photo of Richard, posted by someone named Marianne Collins. The caption said, "Remembering the love of my life. 3 years without you, but not a day goes by without thinking about what we could have built together." Eleanor looked at the date of the post. It was from just 2 days ago. "Who is this Marianne?" she asked. "I don't know," Julia admitted. "But from the comments, it seems she and Richard had some kind of relationship." Eleanor felt her stomach turn. She clicked on Marianne's profile and saw more photos. Marianne and Richard at a party. Richard smiling next to her at a restaurant. It was clearly a romantic relationship. "This doesn't make sense," Eleanor murmured. If Richard was with Gabriella in Italy, how was he also with this Marianne? The dates of the photos seemed to be from different periods, Julia pointed out. Maybe he was with Marianne before or after Gabriella. But there was something in the photos that didn't fit. In one of them, Richard was wearing the same shirt he had on in one of the photos with Gabriella. The same shirt, but with different women. "Julia," Eleanor said slowly, a terrible possibility forming in her mind. "What if Richard was with both of them at the same time?" "No," Julia said immediately. "Richard wasn't like that. You raised him. You know he would never do that." But Eleanor wasn't so sure anymore. Her son had kept a whole relationship secret from her. What else had he hidden? "I need to investigate this," she said finally. "I need to know the truth. I need to understand who my son really was." "Eleanor, be careful," Julia warned. "You might discover things you'd rather not know." "I'd rather know the truth, no matter how painful, than live a lie." She discreetly hired a private investigator without telling Gabriella. She didn't want to worry her unnecessarily, especially if it turned out to be nothing. But it was something. The investigator returned 2 weeks later with a detailed report. "Mrs. Thompson," he began, his expression serious, "I found information that may be disturbing." "Tell me," Eleanor ordered, bracing herself. "Richard Thompson maintained simultaneous relationships with multiple women in the last years of his life. I found evidence of at least 3 serious relationships besides Gabriella Romano: Marianne Collins, with whom he was involved during and after his time in Italy, Vanessa Miller, a co-worker, and Patricia Anderson, whom he met on a business trip to Miami." Eleanor felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. I have photos, messages, testimonies. Your son was very careful, but not careful enough." "Do any of them have children?" "Not that I found. Gabriella Romano appears to be the only one who got pregnant." Eleanor dismissed the investigator and remained alone in her office, the report heavy in her hands. How had she not seen it? How had she not realized her son lived this double, triple, quadruple life? She thought of Gabriella, of how the young woman spoke of Richard with such love and reverence. She thought of all the beautiful stories she'd told about their relationship. Was it all a lie? No, Eleanor decided. It wasn't a lie from Gabriella's perspective. The young Italian truly believed Richard loved her exclusively, and perhaps he did in his twisted way. But he was also with other women at the same time. Eleanor felt torn. Should she tell Gabriella? Destroy the image she had of her daughter's father? Or should she keep this secret, protecting the young woman from the pain of the truth? She decided to seek advice from Julia. "Don't tell her," Julia said firmly, when Eleanor showed her the report. "What good would it do? Gabriella has already suffered enough. Let her keep her happy memories of Richard." "But it's a lie," Eleanor argued. "It's not fair for her to live based on a lie." "Sometimes the lie is kinder than the truth," Julia replied. "And besides, think of Sophia. She'll grow up hearing stories about her father, stories of love and romance. Why take that away from her?" Eleanor pondered Julia's words, but before she could make a decision, the decision was taken out of her hands. Marianne Collins showed up at Eleanor's company 3 days later. She came through reception demanding to speak with Richard's mother. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out now continuing. "I know he had other women," Marianne said when she finally sat in Eleanor's office. "I'm not stupid, but I was the one he truly loved. We were practically engaged when he passed." Eleanor studied the woman before her. Marianne must have been about 35, well-dressed and confident. She didn't seem like the type of person who would be easily fooled. "If you knew about the other women, why did you stay with him?" Eleanor asked. "Because he promised he would eventually choose only me. He said he needed to be sure that he didn't want to make a mistake. And I believed him. I waited." Marianne gave a bitter smile. "I'm still waiting in a way. It's hard to move on when the person never properly ended things with you." "Why are you here, Marianne?" "Because I saw photos on social media. An Italian woman with a small child visiting the apartment that used to be mine and Richard's. Our mutual friend posted without realizing I'd recognized the place. And then I did some research and found out about you taking in this woman." "Gabriella is the mother of my granddaughter," Eleanor said firmly. "A granddaughter who could have been my daughter," Marianne retorted, tears welling in her eyes. "If Richard hadn't left when he did, we were trying to get pregnant. I had stopped taking birth control, he knew, and then, out of nowhere, he just disappeared. Stopped replying to messages, stopped taking calls. I thought I had done something wrong, that I had scared him with all the baby talk." Eleanor felt compassion for the woman before her, but also irritation. Irritation with her son, for having done this to so many women, for being so selfish and irresponsible. What do you want, Marianne? I want you to know the truth about your son. I want this Italian woman to know that she wasn't special, that she was just one more. And I want—" She paused, her voice breaking. "I want someone to acknowledge my pain too, because it seems like everyone feels sorry for the Italian woman with the baby, but no one thinks about the woman he promised to marry, the woman he left waiting without an explanation." "I acknowledge your pain," Eleanor said softly, "and I'm sorry for what my son did. But that doesn't change the fact that Gabriella has a daughter by him, a daughter who is my granddaughter, and I'm not going to push her out of our lives because you're jealous." "It's not jealousy," Marianne said, but her voice wasn't convincing. "It's justice. She doesn't deserve to keep everything that should have been mine." "She didn't keep anything that was yours," Eleanor retorted. "She has a child to raise alone, memories of a man she loved who never came back, and now a family that's trying to welcome her. If you think she has more than you, then you clearly don't understand the burden she carries." Marianne fell quiet for a moment, processing Eleanor's words. "Are you going to tell her?" she finally asked. "About me, about the others?" "I don't know," Eleanor admitted. "I'm still trying to decide what's right." "Well, if you don't tell her, I will," Marianne threatened. "She has the right to know who her daughter's father really was. And what do you think that will bring? Satisfaction? Revenge?" Eleanor challenged. "All it will do is hurt a young woman who has already suffered enough. So she should live in an illusion. She should live in peace." Marianne stood up to leave, but stopped at the door. "You're defending him, even knowing what he did, because he was your son." "I'm not defending," Eleanor corrected. "I'm trying to limit the damage. There's a difference." After Marianne left, Eleanor sat at her desk for a long time thinking. Richard's choices had created ripples that were still spreading, affecting lives years after his departure. She decided she needed to talk to Gabriella. Not about everything, not yet, but about some things. About the complexities of Richard that she herself was only beginning to understand. That evening, after Sophia was asleep, Eleanor and Gabriella sat in the garden with tea. "Gabriella, I need to ask you something," Eleanor began. "And I need you to be honest with me." "I always am," Gabriella replied. "Did Richard ever mention other women? Did you ever feel he might be involved with someone else?" Gabriella's expression changed, a shadow crossing her eyes. "Why are you asking this? Please, just answer." Gabriella was quiet for a moment, stirring her teacup. "There were times," she admitted finally, "when he would become distant. Days when he wouldn't answer messages or said he was too busy to talk. But he always came back, always with an explanation. And I believed, because I wanted to believe." "Did you suspect?" "Deep down? Maybe. But I was in love and pregnant and alone. I couldn't afford to doubt him. I needed the hope he represented. And now? If you found out there were other women, would it change anything?" Gabriella looked directly into Eleanor's eyes. "You found something out. It wasn't a question." Eleanor decided she couldn't lie anymore. "Yes, there were other women. Several." Gabriella didn't seem surprised, just tired. "I knew. Deep down, I always knew. But I chose not to face that truth because it would have made everything so much harder. And now it doesn't matter, does it?" "Doesn't matter. Richard is gone. Whoever he was, whatever choices he made, he isn't here to answer for them. But Sophia is, and she deserves to know the best version of her father, not the worst." Eleanor leaned over and took Gabriella's hand. "You are wiser than I imagined." "I'm not wise," Gabriella disagreed. "I'm just tired. Tired of pain, of disappointment, of twists and turns. I want peace. I want Sophia to grow up loving the memory of her father, even if that memory is partly built on hope and illusion." "One of the women came to see me today," Eleanor confessed. "She threatened to tell you everything." "Let her tell," Gabriella said with a shrug. "I already know the gist. Details won't change anything." "You are incredible," Eleanor said with genuine admiration. "Your strength, your grace through all this." "I have no choice," Gabriella replied simply. Sophia needs a strong mother, so I am strong. Not for me, but for her." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, each lost in her own thoughts. "Eleanor," Gabriella said finally, "I thank you for telling me, for trusting me with the truth. But from now on, can we just move forward, build something new, free from the past?" "I would love that," Eleanor replied sincerely. And they tried. In the following months, they focused on building a life together. Gabriella immersed herself more in work, taking on more responsibilities. Eleanor was getting stronger after the surgery. Sophia started attending a preschool and was flourishing, speaking English and Italian fluently. But the past has a way of not staying buried. Marianne made good on her threat. She published a long post on social media, detailing her relationship with Richard, including photos and messages. The post went viral, with people commenting and sharing. That's how Gabriella finally saw it all. Not just about Marianne, but about Vanessa and Patricia too. Women commenting on the post, sharing their own stories of being involved with Richard. Eleanor found Gabriella in the kitchen, crying silently, while scrolling through her phone, reading every comment, every revelation. "I said I knew," Gabriella sobbed as Eleanor approached. "But reading it all like this, seeing the proof, the photos, the messages, it's different." Eleanor took the phone from her hands and set it aside. "Look at me," she commanded softly. When Gabriella finally faced her, Eleanor continued, "What those women are saying is true. Richard did those things, but it doesn't diminish what you and he had. It doesn't diminish Sophia. It doesn't diminish the fact that, of all those women, you are the only one who brought a part of him back into the world." "But what if he never really loved me?" Gabriella asked, her voice broken. "What if I was just one more?" "You were more than that," Eleanor insisted. "He kept your photo for years, even after returning to the United States. Even while being with other people, he kept that photo. That has to mean something." "Or it means he was good at keeping trophies," Gabriella retorted bitterly. Eleanor had no answer for that. Maybe Gabriella was right. Maybe Richard was exactly that kind of person. The truth was, they would never know for sure. "What matters now," Eleanor said finally, "is what we do with this information. We can let it destroy us, or we can choose to move forward, for Sophia, for ourselves." "I don't know if I can," Gabriella admitted. "I've built my entire life over the past few years around his memory, and now that memory is tainted." "Then build a new life," Eleanor suggested. "Not around Richard, but around yourself, around Sophia, around us as a family. Richard is the past. We are the present and the future." Gabriella wiped her tears and looked at Eleanor. "How are you so strong? He was your son. It must hurt to know these things about him." "It does," Eleanor admitted. "It hurts deeply, because it means I didn't know him as well as I thought. It means I failed as a mother at some point in teaching him to treat people with respect. But I also know I can't change the past. I can only try to do better now." In the following days, more women came forward, some just wanting to share their stories, others seeking some kind of financial compensation. Eleanor handled each one with dignity, listening to their stories, apologizing on behalf of her son, but making clear that Gabriella and Sophia were her priority. One of these women, Vanessa, revealed something that changed everything once again. She had a son, a 3-year-old boy with blue eyes and blonde curls, exactly like Richard. "I didn't want money," Vanessa explained when she finally met with Eleanor, with little Lucas in her arms. "That's why I never contacted the family. But after seeing all this drama on social media, I thought you had the right to know." Eleanor looked at the boy and saw Richard instantly. There was no doubt. This was another grandson. "Are you sure he's Richard's?" she asked, even though she already knew the answer. "I am. I can do a DNA test if you want, but I know he's Richard's son. Just as I know Richard had no idea. I found out about the pregnancy after he left and decided not to tell him. It seemed simpler that way." "Simpler," Eleanor repeated, the word sounding bitter. "It seems several women made that decision." It wasn't out of malice, Vanessa defended herself. It was out of fear. Fear of being rejected, of not being believed, of complicating his life. Eleanor looked at Lucas, who was watching her with childish curiosity. Another grandson, another child who would grow up without knowing his father. And now? What do you want? Honestly? I don't know. I saw that you took in the Italian woman and her daughter. I thought maybe there was room for Lucas too, not financially. I can support my son, but emotionally, so he can have family, so he can know his grandmother and his half-sister. Eleanor felt the weight of another impossible decision falling on her shoulders. How to tell Gabriella, how to explain that Sophia had a brother, how to integrate another person into this already complicated dynamic. I need time to process this, Eleanor said finally, and to talk with Gabriella, but she looked at Lucas again. You and your son are welcome to visit, to meet Sophia, to get to know us. Telling Gabriella was as difficult as Eleanor had imagined. The young Italian woman was initially shocked, then angry, then came to a weary acceptance. Of course there's more, she said, laughing humorlessly. Why would there be just one? Richard was clearly prolific. Gabriella. No, it's true. And you know what's worse? Part of me is even relieved. Relieved that Sophia will have a brother. That she won't be alone in the world. Is that terrible? It's not terrible, Eleanor assured. It's human, and it shows how big your heart is. The first time Sophia and Lucas met was surreal. The two children looked at each other with curiosity, circling one another like small animals assessing the situation. Brother, Sophia said in English, the new word in her language. Sister, Lucas replied, extending his hand. Sophia took it, and hand in hand, they ran to the garden to play, leaving three women watching with tears in their eyes. They don't carry the weight that we carry, Vanessa observed. For them, it's simple. They're siblings. End of story. I wish it were that simple for us, Gabriella said. Maybe it can be, Eleanor suggested, if we choose for it to be, if we decide that Richard and his choices won't define our lives from now on. It was a process, but gradually, the three women found a rhythm. Vanessa and Lucas started visiting regularly. The children became inseparable, and the women, united by bizarre circumstances, formed an unlikely bond. We're like a modern, dysfunctional family, Vanessa joked one day during lunch. Family was never about perfection, Eleanor replied. It's about showing up. And we're showing up for each other. But then, 6 months later, when it seemed like things were finally stabilizing, Marianne showed up again. This time she wasn't alone. She was pregnant. Visibly pregnant. Before you say anything, she began when Eleanor opened the door. It's not Richard's. Obviously. But I'm expecting a baby. And the father doesn't want to be involved. And I realized watching all of you, building this strange family together, that maybe I've been looking in the wrong place all along. What are you saying, Marianne? Eleanor asked, confused. I'm saying I was jealous, not of losing Richard, but of losing the chance to be part of something bigger, a family. And I know it's incredibly bold of me to show up here pregnant with another man's child and ask to be included. But come in, Gabriella said suddenly, appearing behind Eleanor. Please come in. Marianne entered, tears already streaming. I don't deserve your kindness. I was awful to you. You were hurting, Gabriella said simply. We all were. But we don't have to keep hurting. We can choose something different. And so, in a way none of them could have predicted, the family expanded once more. Marianne started visiting, first hesitantly, then more frequently. Her baby was born 3 months later, a girl she named Claire. For a new beginning, she explained. Nothing tied to the past, just future. The children were growing up together now. Sophia, Lucas, and Claire, a family chosen rather than born. And the women, Eleanor, Gabriella, Vanessa, and eventually Marianne, found friendship and support in one another. Have you ever thought, Vanessa said one day, watching the children play, that Richard inadvertently created something beautiful? Not through his actions, but in spite of them. The universe has a strange sense of humor, Eleanor agreed. My son was flawed, human, and made terrible mistakes, but from those bad situations, something good emerged. We all emerged. 1 year after Gabriella first appeared at the cemetery, Eleanor organized a dinner to celebrate. Not Richard's birthday, not his departure, but the day their lives first intertwined. A toast, she said, raising her glass with all the women around the table. To family. Not the family we're born into, but the family we choose. To forgiveness, to second chances, and to love that finds a way, even in the most unlikely places. To family, they all repeated. Sophia, now 3.5, stood up on her chair. Nonna, can I say something? Of course, my dear. I love everybody here. And I'm thankful my daddy brought us together, even if he's not here. The innocence and wisdom of a child's words made all the women cry. Sophia was right. Despite everything, despite the lies and pain and complications, Richard had created connections. And those connections had turned into something real and valuable, but the story hadn't finished its twists yet. A few months later, Eleanor received a call from her lawyer. Mrs. Thompson, there's a situation. A woman named Paula Bennett is trying to file a lawsuit. She claims she also has a child with Richard, and that she deserves part of the inheritance. Eleanor sighed. Of course there was more. Does she have proof? She says she does. She wants to meet with you in person. Paula showed up at Eleanor's house the following week. Unlike the other women, she was older, perhaps in her early 40s, and had a professional and calculated air. I'll be direct, she said, refusing the tea Eleanor offered. I know there have been other women. I read all about it on social media, but I'm different. I have a contract. A contract? Paula pulled papers from her bag. Richard and I had an agreement. I agreed to have his child through artificial insemination, with the promise that he would acknowledge the child and provide financial support. I have everything documented, signed, legally binding. Eleanor took the papers, her eyes scanning them quickly. It looked legitimate. There was even Richard's signature. Why would he do this, she asked, confused. Because I said I didn't want a romantic relationship. I just wanted a child, and he wanted, I don't know, maybe to leave a legacy without the emotional complications. We thought it would be perfect, clinical, simple. And you have a child? A 5-year-old son, Michael. He's Richard's, I can prove it with DNA. And according to this contract, he is entitled to a share of the inheritance. Eleanor sat down heavily. 5 years? Your son is 5 years old. Where have you been all this time? Fulfilling my part of the agreement, Richard sent money monthly. I didn't need anything else. But then I found out he had passed away, and that he had other children who apparently are entitled to the inheritance. My son deserves the same. Eleanor didn't know what to think or feel. She was tired. Tired of revelations, of complications, of discovering new things about a son who seemed more like a stranger every day. I need to verify the authenticity of these documents, she said finally. And if they are real, yes, your son will have rights. But don't expect this to be simple. There's a family here, a family we built together. If you want to be part of it, you'll need to understand that it's not just about money. I don't want to be part of the family, Paula said coldly. I want what is legally owed to me, nothing more. And there was the difference. The other women, despite their complications and pain, had sought connection. Paula only sought compensation. The legal case that followed was draining. Paula proved that the contract was real and that Michael was Richard's son. The will had to be rewritten again, now dividing the inheritance among Sophia, Lucas, and Michael. How is this happening? Gabriella asked one night, exhausted from all the legal complications. How did Richard manage to complicate things so much even when he's no longer here? He was running away, Eleanor said, finally understanding, from responsibility, from commitment, from having to choose. So he tried to have it all, without considering the consequences. And we are the consequences, Gabriella added bitterly. We are more than that, Eleanor insisted. We are survivors. We are a family he never had the courage to build. But even so, the weight was becoming too heavy. Every revelation, every new child, Every legal complication was eroding the peace they had worked so hard to build. It was Sophia, surprisingly, who brought clarity to the situation. One night during dinner with Eleanor and Gabriella, she asked, "Mommy, why doesn't the lady with the boy come play with us like the others?" "Because she doesn't want to, sweetheart," Gabriella explained. "But Michael is my brother too, right? Like Lucas?" "Yes, technically." "Then why aren't we friends?" Gabriella and Eleanor exchanged glances, out of the mouths of babes. "You're right," Eleanor said to Sophia. "We should try." She called Paula the next day. "I would like to invite you and Michael to lunch. Not to talk about money or inheritance, just so Michael can meet his siblings." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Why?" Paula finally asked. "Because my 3-year-old granddaughter has more wisdom than all us adults put together. And she's right. Michael is Sophia and Lucas's brother. They deserve to know each other." Paula agreed, though reluctantly. The first meeting was tense. Michael was a quiet and shy boy, clearly confused about why he was there. But Sophia, with her open and welcoming nature, quickly drew him into play. "Come see the playhouse in the garden," she shouted in English, grabbing Michael's hand. Lucas joined them, and soon the 3 children were playing as if they had always known each other. Paula watched from a distance, her professional armor beginning to crack. "I didn't expect this," she admitted to Eleanor. "I thought it would be, I don't know, more hostile." "Children don't carry our resentments," Eleanor replied. "They simply see other children, siblings, family." "Family?" Paula repeated the word as if it were foreign in her language. "I avoided this so carefully. The contract with Richard was meant to avoid exactly this. Emotional complications." "And how is that working for you?" Gabriella asked, not maliciously but genuinely curious. Paula looked at her son, laughing with his half-siblings, a joy on his face that she rarely saw at home. "It's not working," she admitted. "Michael is always alone. I work a lot and he spends most of his time with nannies. He needs this family." "Then perhaps," Eleanor suggested gently, "you should consider being part of it too. Not out of legal obligation, but because your son deserves it." Paula didn't respond immediately, but in the following months she began to show up more often, never completely comfortable, always maintaining some emotional distance, but present. And slowly, very slowly, she also began to open up, to share stories about Michael, to laugh at the children's antics, to join in family meals. "I never had this," she confessed one day to Eleanor. "I grew up in a cold, distant family. My parents valued success above connection. I thought I wanted the same, but seeing you all together, I realize I was wrong. It's never too late to change," Eleanor replied. During this time, Eleanor's company continued to grow, with Gabriella becoming an integral part of the operations. She had a natural talent for business and handling difficult clients. "You should consider taking over the company one day," Eleanor suggested during a board meeting. "Me?" Gabriella seemed shocked. "But I'm just a translator." "You're much more than that," Eleanor insisted, "and you deserve to be recognized for it." It was a long journey, but eventually Gabriella accepted more responsibilities, repeatedly proving her worth. The other employees, initially skeptical about a young foreigner in a position of power, soon came to respect her for her hard work and integrity, but Eleanor's health was beginning to decline again. Small signs at first: fatigue, occasional shortness of breath, chest pains that she attributed to stress. Gabriella noticed first. "Are you okay?" she asked after seeing Eleanor pause in the middle of a staircase, clearly struggling to catch her breath. "I'm fine," Eleanor insisted, but her voice wasn't convincing. "You said that last time, and you almost left us," Gabriella reminded her. "Let's go to the doctor, now." The tests revealed that Eleanor's heart health was deteriorating. The previous surgery had helped, but hadn't resolved the underlying problem. "You need another surgery," the doctor explained. "More complex this time, and at your age the risks are significant." Eleanor looked at Gabriella, who was holding Sophia in her lap, both with worried expressions. "What are my chances?" 60% survival rate." And if I don't have the surgery? 6 months, maybe a year if you're lucky. Eleanor asked for a moment alone to think. She was 70 years old now. She had lived a full life, built an empire, found a family she never expected to have. But there was still so much she wanted to see. Sophia starting school, Lucas learning to read, Michael coming out of his shell, Gabriella fully taking over the company, Marianne finally finding peace, Vanessa achieving her dreams, Paula learning to truly love. She decided to risk the surgery. The night before the procedure, all the women and children gathered at Eleanor's house. It was a strange celebration, everyone trying to keep the mood light, but with an underlying tension that was impossible to ignore. "This won't be a goodbye," Eleanor said firmly, when she noticed Gabriella quietly crying in the kitchen. "I'll get through this, and I'll bother you for 20 more years." "Do you promise?" Sophia asked, her big blue eyes frightened. Eleanor took her granddaughter into her arms. "I promise I'll fight hard, because I haven't finished watching you grow up yet. I still need to be there for your first day of school, your first play, your graduation. I won't miss any of it." Sophia hugged Eleanor with all the strength her small body could muster. "I love you, Nonna. I love you too, my dear, more than you'll ever know." That night, after the children were asleep, the women stayed up talking, sharing stories, memories, hopes for the future. "I want you to know," Eleanor said, looking at each of them, "that you saved me. After I lost Richard, I was just existing. You gave me a reason to live again." "You saved us too," Gabriella replied. "Every one of us. You gave us family when we were alone. And we will continue to be family," Vanessa added, "whatever happens tomorrow." "Yes," Marianne agreed. "We are strong together. We'll get through this." Even Paula, still uncomfortable with emotional displays, nodded in agreement. "Thank you," Eleanor said, tears flowing freely now. "Thank you for letting me be part of your lives, for forgiving an old woman for being the mother of a flawed man. You are not responsible for his choices," Gabriella said firmly, "and you are so much more than just his mother. You are our matriarch, our anchor, our Eleanor." The surgery was scheduled for 6 in the morning. All the women were there, even Paula, who cancelled important meetings to be present. The children stayed with babysitters, spared the tension of the wait. The hours dragged on. 7 hours of surgery, every minute feeling like an eternity. Finally, the surgeon appeared. His face was hard to read. "The surgery was successful," he announced, and a collective sigh of relief filled the room. "But there were complications. We had to do extra repairs we didn't anticipate. The recovery will be long and difficult." "But will she recover?" Gabriella asked, her voice trembling. "If she fights, if she has reasons to fight." "She does," all the women said in unison. Eleanor spent 2 weeks in the ICU before being transferred to a regular room. During that time, at least one of the women was always with her, holding her hand, talking to her even when she was unconscious. When Eleanor finally woke up completely, the first thing she saw was Sophia sitting by her bed, carefully drawing. "Nonna!" the girl shouted when she noticed Eleanor was awake. "You came back." "I promised I would come back," Eleanor said, her voice hoarse but firm, "and I always keep my promises." The recovery was brutal. There were days when Eleanor wanted to give up, when the pain was too much, when she questioned if it had been worth it. But then Sophia would appear with a drawing, or Lucas would tell a silly joke, or Michael shyly shared something he learned at school, and Eleanor found the strength to continue. Gabriella was by her side every day, taking on not just the management of the company, but also Eleanor's personal care. She was firm but gentle, not accepting excuses when Eleanor tried to skip physical therapy exercises or refused to eat. "You fought for this second chance," Gabriella would say. "You're not going to waste it now out of stubbornness." Gradually, painfully, Eleanor improved. 3 months after the surgery, she was walking with the aid of a cane. 6 months later, she was back in the office, working part-time. 1 year later, she was fully recovered, stronger than before the surgery. "I should have done this years ago," she joked with her doctor. "I feel like I'm 50 again." With her health restored, Eleanor could focus completely on her expanded family. She organized weekly dinners where everyone would gather. She set up an educational fund for the 3 children. She began teaching Gabriella every aspect of the business, preparing her to eventually take over completely. But there was one project that was particularly close to Eleanor's heart. A project she had thought about during her long recovery. "I want to create something in memory of Richard," she announced during one of the family dinners. "Not a monument to the man he was, but a legacy of what he should have been. A community center that offers support for single mothers, language classes, job training, childcare. Everything you women had to struggle to get on your own." All the women looked at her in surprise. "The Richard Thompson Center," Eleanor continued, "dedicated to turning past mistakes into hope for the future." "I love that," Vanessa said, tears in her eyes. "It's perfect." "Can I help with the planning?" Paula offered. "I have experience in project management." "And I can teach languages," Gabriella added. "Italian, English, whatever is needed." "I can help with children's programs," Marianne suggested. "I know I don't have formal experience, but I've learned a lot from being a mother." Eleanor looked around the table, her heart overflowing with love for this strange and wonderful family they had built together. "Then let's do it together," she said. "As a family." The Richard Thompson Center opened 2 years later in a renovated building in downtown New York City. It was a bright and welcoming space, full of classrooms, a well-equipped daycare, offices for counseling, and even a small cafe where mothers could gather and form support networks. At the opening, Eleanor invited all the women to say a few words. Gabriella was the first. "When I came to the United States 4 years ago," she began, her voice clear and strong, "I was alone, scared and desperate. If a center like this had existed, it would have changed everything. I hope we can make that difference for other women, so none of them have to struggle alone like we did." Vanessa spoke about the importance of not judging women's choices, Marianne about second chances, Paula about the difference between being a mother and being a good mother, and Eleanor, as the last one, shared her own story. "I built a company from scratch," she said, "but that's not my greatest achievement. My greatest achievement is this family. It's having learned that family isn't about blood or DNA or legal contracts. It's about showing up. It's about choosing to love even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." She looked at the women in front of her, then at the children running through the new space, their laughter echoing off the walls. "My son made many mistakes, but from those mistakes something beautiful was born. You, this family. And now this center, where other women and children will find the support you had to fight to get." The crowd applauded, and the children ran to hug their mothers and their nonna, a messy pile of love and joy. In the following years, the center flourished. Hundreds of women passed through its doors, finding help, community, and hope. Many of them formed lasting bonds, creating their own chosen families, just as Eleanor and the others had done. Sophia, Lucas, and Michael grew up together, inseparable despite their differences. Sophia was the natural leader, always organizing games and adventures. Lucas was the funny one, keeping everyone laughing. Michael was the thoughtful one, asking deep questions and offering surprising insights for his age. And Claire, Marianne's daughter, even though she was younger and didn't share DNA with the other children, was completely accepted as part of the tribe. Gabriella eventually took over the company completely, proving to be an even better leader than Eleanor had been. She expanded internationally, opening offices in Europe and Latin America. But she never forgot her roots, always keeping the community center as a priority, allocating a significant percentage of the company's profits for its maintenance. Vanessa resumed her studies, becoming a nurse and eventually working at the center, offering health care for the mothers and children. Marianne found peace, forming a healthy relationship with a man who loved not only her, but also Claire. She became the children's program coordinator at the center, and Paula, surprisingly, changed more than anyone. She left her corporate job and went back to school to become a social worker, dedicating herself to helping other single mothers avoid the mistakes she had made of prioritizing money over connection. Eleanor, now 75 years old, reduced her direct involvement in the business, but remained actively involved in the center. She was there every week, talking with the mothers, playing with the children, sharing her wisdom and experience. One day, 5 years after Gabriella had first appeared at the cemetery, Eleanor was sitting in the center's garden, watching the children play. Sophia was 8 years old now, a bright and compassionate girl who spoke 3 languages fluently. Lucas was 9, a charismatic boy who made friends wherever he went. Michael was 10, an avid reader who always carried a book, and Claire was 5, a little storm of energy and curiosity. Gabriella sat down next to Eleanor, the two watching the children in comfortable silence. "Do you regret it?" Gabriella asked suddenly. "Everything that happened, the complications, the pain, the revelations about Richard." Eleanor thought for a long moment. "I regret that my son wasn't the man I hoped he would be. I regret that he caused so much pain. But I don't regret where it led us. Because look," she gestured to the children, then to Vanessa, Marianne, and Paula, chatting animatedly near the coffee. "Look what we built, look at the family we created. Look at the lives we changed." "It's strange," Gabriella admitted, "but sometimes I'm grateful things happened the way they did. If Richard had returned to Italy as promised, if we had gotten married and lived a normal life, I would never have this. This extended family, this community, this purpose." "The universe works in mysterious ways," Eleanor said. "Sometimes what seems like a tragedy at the time is really a redirection, an opportunity for something greater." "You became my mother, you know," Gabriella said softly. "Not just Sophia's grandmother, but my mother, the mother I never had." Eleanor felt tears burning her eyes. She took Gabriella's hand and squeezed it. "And you became the daughter I always wanted, the daughter who would have made me proud always." They sat like that, hands entwined, hearts connected, watching the next generation grow up in an environment of love and acceptance that neither of them had ever had. Sophia ran up to them, her blonde curls flying. "Nonna! Mama, come see what we built!" She led them to where the children had built an elaborate city of blocks. "This is our family," Sophia explained, pointing to different blocks. "This is you, Nonna, and this is Mama, and these are all of us, together." "It's perfect," Eleanor said, hugging her granddaughter, "just as all of you are perfect." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the family gathered for the weekly dinner. The table was large, comfortably seating 10 people. Eleanor, Gabriella, Sophia, Vanessa, Lucas, Marianne, Claire, Paula, Michael, and Marianne's new partner, Daniel, who had been welcomed into the family with the same acceptance as everyone else. As they ate and laughed, sharing stories from the day and making plans for the future, Eleanor looked around and felt a deep peace. Her life had not been what she expected. There had been pain, loss, shocking revelations, and immense challenges. But there had also been love. So much love. A family that transcended blood and circumstances, a community she had helped build, a legacy that would reach far beyond her time on earth. Sophia stood up to make a toast, as Eleanor had taught her. "I want to thank you," the 8-year-old said, with a seriousness that contrasted with her age, "for having the best family in the world. We're not like other families, and I like that, because it means we choose each other every day." Wise beyond her years, Eleanor whispered to Gabriella. "She learned from the best," Gabriella replied. As the evening wore on and the children eventually began to doze in various corners of the room, the women stayed awake, talking in low tones, making plans for the center, sharing worries and victories. "Sometimes it feels surreal," Marianne commented, "that we're all ex-girlfriends of the same man, but also best friends." "Richard would have hated this," Paula said with a smile. "He always wanted to keep us all apart, and we did the exact opposite." "Maybe that's his real legacy," Vanessa suggested. "Not his choices or his mistakes, but our choice to turn his mess into something beautiful." "I'll drink to that," Eleanor said, raising her glass. "To turning wounds into wisdom, pain into purpose, and loneliness into love." "Salute," Gabriella added. "Cheers," everyone repeated. That night, after everyone had left, Eleanor stood alone on the porch of her house, looking up at the stars. She thought of Richard, wondering if he could see them from wherever he was, wondering what he would think of the family his actions had inadvertently created. "I hope you can see this," she said aloud to the night sky. I hope you can see that in spite of everything, something good came from your choices, that your daughters and sons are growing up loved and secure, that the women you hurt found healing together, and that your mother finally found peace, not in the man you were, but in the family that rose from your ashes. A gentle breeze blew, making the trees whisper. Eleanor chose to believe it was an answer, an acknowledgement, a blessing. She went inside, passing by the room where Sophia was fast asleep, clutching a teddy bear. Eleanor tucked the blanket over her granddaughter and kissed her forehead. "Good night, my dear," she whispered. "Dream of beautiful things. Dream of a future full of love and possibilities, because that's what we have now. That's what we built together." In the months and years that followed, the family continued to grow and evolve. Vanessa met someone and got married, bringing a wonderful stepfather for Lucas. Paula slowly opened up more, allowing vulnerability and genuine connection. Marianne and Daniel had another child, a boy who became the group's mascot, and Gabriella, gradually, began dating again. She wasn't looking for it, but she met Marco, an Italian architect who had moved to New York City. He was kind, patient, and most importantly, loved Sophia, as if she were his own daughter. "Is he good enough for you?" Eleanor asked when Gabriella told her about the relationship. "No one is, Richard," Gabriella answered honestly, "but I'm also learning that maybe that's a good thing. Marco sees me, values me, is present. That's more than Richard was ever able to give." "Then he sounds perfect to me," Eleanor concluded. Gabriella and Marco's wedding was a joyful celebration, with the whole family involved. Sophia was the maid of honor, serious in her responsibilities. Lucas and Michael were ring-bearers, and Claire scattered flower petals down the aisle with enthusiastic abandon. Eleanor sat in the front row, tears of joy streaming down her face as she watched Gabriella, radiant in her white dress, pledge her love to a man who truly deserved it. "Would Richard have approved?" Julia whispered to Eleanor. "Richard no longer has a say in this," Eleanor replied, "but I approve, and that's what matters." At the reception, during the speech, Gabriella called Eleanor to stand beside her. "This woman," Gabriella said, her voice choked with emotion, "has given me more than I can ever express. She gave me a home when I had none, a family when I was alone, a purpose when I felt lost. She is my mother in every way that counts." Eleanor didn't try to hide her tears. She hugged Gabriella tightly, whispering in her ear, "You've always been more than my granddaughter's mother. You are my daughter, my pride, my joy." The party lasted late into the night, with music, dancing, and laughter. The children ran free, the adults relaxed, and for one night, all the complications and pains of the past seemed distant. When the party finally ended and the guests left, the immediate family stayed to help clean up. It was during this moment, working side by side on mundane tasks, that Eleanor realized how far they had come. These women, who started as strangers, united only by a man who had hurt them, had become something much greater. They had become sisters, friends, allies. They had created something that no traditional family could replicate, a daily choice to love and support each other, not out of obligation, but out of genuine affection. "What are you thinking about?" Sophia asked, appearing beside Eleanor. "I'm thinking about how fortunate I am," Eleanor replied, "to have you all in my life." "We're fortunate too," Sophia said, with the confidence of someone who had always known love and security. "I have the best nonna in the world." Eleanor hugged her granddaughter, breathing in the scent of her child's shampoo, feeling the warmth of her small body against hers. "I love you to the moon and back," she said, a phrase she had repeated 1,000 times but never lost its meaning. "I love you to the sun and back," Sophia replied, the pattern they had established. As the years passed, Eleanor began to slow down naturally, not from illness or weakness, but from the natural weariness of a life well lived. She was 80 years old now, and her body was asking for rest. But her mind remained sharp and her heart remained full. She spent her days at the center, no longer managing, but being a wise and welcoming presence. The women came to her with problems, seeking advice, and Eleanor offered it generously. One day a young mother approached her. She was crying, holding a baby in her arms. "I don't know what to do," the young woman sobbed. "My baby's father is gone. I have no family. I have no money. I don't know how I'm going to survive." Eleanor took the young woman's hand and had her sit down. "You will survive," she said with certainty, "the same way all of us survive, one day at a time. And you're not alone. See all these women here?" She gestured to the full center. "Each of them has faced something similar, and each has found her way. And we will help you find yours." The young woman looked around, seeing women talking, laughing, supporting one another. She saw hope where before there was only despair. "Is it really going to be okay?" she asked. "Eventually, yes," Eleanor promised. "Not immediately. There will be hard days, lonely nights, moments when you'll want to give up. But you won't give up because this baby needs you, and because there's a family here waiting to welcome you." It was at that moment that Gabriella entered and saw Eleanor comforting the young mother. She smiled, remembering when she herself was in that position, scared and alone, finding comfort in a stranger at the cemetery. The circle was complete. What Eleanor had done for Gabriella, they were now doing for countless others. The legacy continued, expanding in waves of compassion and support. That evening, during the family dinner, Eleanor made an announcement. "I've been thinking a lot about the future," she began, "and about the legacy I want to leave." "Nonna, you're not going anywhere for a long time," Sophia protested. She was 13 now, a confident and compassionate teenager. "I know, dear," Eleanor assured. "But it's important to plan, and what I want more than anything is for this center, this family, to continue, not just for a few more years, but for generations." "It will continue," Gabriella promised. "We'll make sure of it." "I know you will," Eleanor said. "But I want to formalize some things. I want to create a foundation, something that will outlive me, that will ensure the center always has resources. And I want all of you to be part of the board, Gabriella, Vanessa, Marianne, Paula, and when Sophia is old enough, her too." "I'd love to," Sophia said immediately, her eyes shining. "The Richard Thompson Center is going to change its name," Eleanor continued. "It will become the Thompson Family Support Center, because it's not about Richard. It never was. It's about family, about choosing to love, about turning wounds into wisdom." "It's perfect," Vanessa said. "When do you want to do this?" Paula asked, always practical. "I've already started the legal process," Eleanor admitted. "The papers should be ready next week. I just need all of your signatures." "You have them," they all said in unison. The foundation was established with great ceremony. There was media coverage, donations from companies impressed with the work they were doing, and official recognition from the City Hall. But for Eleanor, the truly special moment was the private board meeting, when only the family was present. "You are my greatest legacy," she said, looking at each woman. "Not the company, not the center. You, the family we built together, the community we created, the love we cultivated. And you are ours," Gabriella replied. "Our matriarch, our inspiration, our Eleanor." They embraced, a messy pile of women of different ages, stories and experiences, united by something stronger than blood, choice, the daily choice to love, support and value one another. Eleanor lived another 10 years after that moment, 10 years full of joy, watching her granddaughters and grandsons grow up, seeing the center flourish beyond her wildest dreams, seeing the women she had gathered become leaders in their own communities. She was there when Sophia graduated from high school with honors, planning to study human rights in college. She was there when Lucas discovered his talent for music and gave his first concert. She was there when Michael won a writing competition with a story about non-traditional families. She was there when Claire, now 15, announced she wanted to become a social worker like Paula to help other children. And she was there when Gabriella and Marco had another child, a boy they named Richard, not in honor of the man he was, but in hope for the man the name could represent this time. "Are you sure about the name?" Eleanor asked when Gabriella told her. "Yes," Gabriella replied, Because this Richard will grow up differently. He will grow up knowing the value of family, of presence, of making the right choices. He will honor the name, not tarnish it. Eleanor held the newborn baby, looking into his blue eyes, and felt a deep peace. Perhaps this was the second chance none of them knew they needed. A chance to remake, to start over, to create something new from the complicated legacy the first Richard had left. When Eleanor turned 90, there was a big celebration at the center. Hundreds of people showed up. Women who had been helped by the center, children who had grown up playing in its safe spaces, staff who had found purpose in their work there. But for Eleanor, the most special moment was when just the family gathered at her home that night. 3 generations now, Eleanor, the mothers, and the children, some of whom were already young adults. "I'd like to say a few words," Eleanor announced when everyone was seated. "You have given me the greatest gift anyone could ask for. Time. Time to get to know my grandchildren. Time to see this family grow. Time to turn tragedy into triumph." Her voice was weaker now, but firm. "When Gabriella showed up at that cemetery 21 years ago, I was lost. I had lost my only son and thought I had lost all purpose. But she brought light back into my life. And not just her, but each one of you." She looked at Vanessa. "You taught me that strength comes in many forms, that a mother working 3 jobs to give her son dignity is as powerful as any executive." Then, to Marianne, "You taught me about second chances, that our mistakes don't define us, but how we choose to grow from them does." To Paula, "You taught me that it's never too late to change, that we can choose connection over convenience, love over logic." And finally to Gabriella, who was crying silently, "And you, my dear daughter of the heart, taught me that family is a choice, that love doesn't need blood ties to be real, that courage is crossing an ocean alone with a baby, hoping to find answers, and having the strength to rebuild when the answers aren't what we expected." Eleanor looked at the children, now young adults and teenagers. "And you, my loves, gave me a reason to keep going. Every smile, every hug, every achievement, you are my greatest pride." Sophia, now 23 and a recent college graduate, stood up and hugged her grandmother. "We are who we are because of you," she said. "You taught us that family is about presence, about choosing to be there every day, even when it's hard." Lucas, 24, a professional musician, now added, "You gave us a foundation, a safe place to grow up, and for that, Nonna, we are eternally grateful." Michael, 25, who had just published his first book about non-traditional families, held Eleanor's hand. "You are the embodiment of grace and strength," he said, "and my book is dedicated to you because you are the reason I understand the true meaning of family." Even Claire, now 20 years old and studying to become a social worker, had tears in her eyes. "You accepted me even though we don't share DNA," she said. "That taught me that belonging isn't about biology. It's about heart." And little Richard, now 10 years old, ran to Eleanor and threw himself into her arms. "I love you, Grandma," he said simply. "You're the coolest person in the world." Eleanor laughed through her tears, hugging the boy who carried her son's name, but was already showing himself to be a much better human being. "I love you too, my dear, all of you, more than words can express." That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Eleanor stayed awake in her room reflecting on her life. 90 years. There were moments when she didn't think she would even reach 70. But here she was, surrounded by love, having built something that would last long beyond her life. She picked up a notebook she kept on the nightstand and began to write. Letters, one for each member of her family, to be opened when she was no longer here. For Gabriella, she wrote about courage and resilience, about how the young Italian woman who appeared crying at the cemetery had transformed into a powerful leader, an exceptional mother, and the daughter Eleanor had always dreamed of having. For Vanessa, about the dignity that comes from hard work and unconditional love for a child. For Marianne, about the power of forgiveness and personal transformation. For Paula, about having the courage to change even when it seems impossible. For each grandchild, personalized messages about their unique gifts and the potential she saw in them. And for Sophia, a special letter. Sophia, who had been the catalyst for everything. the girl in the yellow dress who appeared at the cemetery and changed the course of so many lives. "My dear Sophia," she wrote, "you were the miracle I didn't know I was waiting for. When I first saw you, I saw my son in your eyes and thought that would be our only connection. But you became so much more. You are brilliant, compassionate, strong. You inherited the best from all of us and became something entirely your own. Keep being that light in the world. Keep choosing love over hate, understanding over judgment, connection over isolation. You will do amazing things, my dear, and I will be watching from wherever I am, proud of every step you take." Eleanor finished the letters as the sun began to rise. She carefully sealed them and placed them in a box with instructions for Gabriella about when to deliver them. The following months were peaceful. Eleanor further reduced her activities, preferring to spend quality time with her family rather than spreading herself thin. She knew, in a way only very elderly people know, that her time was approaching. There was no fear, only acceptance. She had lived a long and full life. She had loved and been loved. She had built things that would last. She had left the world better than she found it. One autumn afternoon, 6 months after her 90th birthday, Eleanor was in the garden with Sophia and little Richard. They were planting roses, an activity Eleanor had always loved. "Nonna," Sophia said as they dug, "do you believe in life after what comes next?" Eleanor considered the question carefully. "I think we live on through the people we love, through the lessons we teach, the lives we touch, the love we leave behind. In that sense, yes, I believe in life after, because even when I'm no longer here physically, I'll be in each of you." "That's beautiful," Sophia said, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Hey, why are you talking about sad things?" little Richard protested. "Grandma is going to live forever." Eleanor laughed and ruffled the boy's hair. "Not forever, dear, but long enough. More than long enough." That night, Eleanor had trouble breathing. It wasn't sharp or painful, just a deep fatigue that seemed to penetrate to her bones. Gabriella called the doctor immediately. "Her heart is weakening," the doctor explained after examining her. "It's natural at this age, especially considering the previous surgeries. We can take her to the hospital, but honestly, there isn't much we can do beyond making her comfortable." "How long?" Gabriella asked, her voice breaking. "Days, perhaps a week or 2. Eleanor took Gabriella's hand. "I want to stay at home, with my family. I don't want to die in a hospital." Gabriella nodded, unable to speak through the tears. The family was summoned. Everyone came immediately. Vanessa, Marianne, Paula, all the grandchildren, even Julia, now 89 and frail, but determined to be there for her best friend. They established a vigil of love. Someone was always with Eleanor, holding her hand, reading to her, telling stories, just being present. "Don't cry," Eleanor would say every time she saw tears. "This isn't a sad moment. I've had a wonderful life. More than I deserved. You all gave that to me." Sophia spent hours sitting by Eleanor's bedside, sometimes talking, sometimes in comfortable silence. "I'm scared," Sophia admitted one night, "scared of a world without you in it." "I will always be with you," Eleanor assured her. "In the hard times you will hear me. In the happy times, you will feel me celebrating by your side. Death doesn't erase love, dear. It just changes how we express it." "How will I know I'm making the right decisions?" Sophia asked. "You were always my compass." "You have your own compass," Eleanor replied. "You always have. I just helped you learn how to read it. Trust your heart, Sophia. It will guide you well." A week later, Eleanor gathered her strength for one last conversation with the whole family. Everyone crowded into her bedroom, sitting on the bed, on the floor, leaning against the walls. "I need to say goodbye properly," she began, her voice weak but clear. "And I need you to promise me a few things." "Anything," Gabriella said immediately. "First, promise me you will continue this family, that you will gather for dinners, that you will support each other, that you will choose love even when it's difficult." "We promise," they said in unison. "Second, promise me you will continue the center, that you will expand it, help more women, create more families like ours." "We promise." "Third, promise me you won't get stuck in grief. You will cry, yes, but then you will laugh again. You will live fully. You will honor my memory by living well, not by staying stagnant in sadness. We promise, but this promise came with more difficulty through sobs. And finally, Eleanor said, looking directly at Gabriella, promise me you will let the past be the past. Richard, your choices, the pain he caused, let it go. You built something far more beautiful than any relationship you had. Be proud of that. I promise, Gabriella whispered. Eleanor smiled, satisfied. She looked around the room, memorizing every face, every expression of love. You are my greatest legacy, she said one last time. Not the company, not the money, not the buildings or the programs. You, the love between you, the family you chose to be. That is what matters. That is what remains. That night, Eleanor fell asleep peacefully, surrounded by her family, and the next morning she simply didn't wake up. She passed quietly, without pain, surrounded by love. The news spread quickly. The center closed for 3 days in mourning. Hundreds of people showed up at the funeral, people whose lives Eleanor had touched in some way. But the real tribute came from the family. Each woman spoke, sharing what Eleanor had meant to her. And the children, now young adults, shared stories about the grandmother who had chosen to love them unconditionally. Sophia was the last to speak. She stood at the podium, looking at the crowd, then at the casket where her nonna rested. My grandmother used to say that family is a choice, Sophia began, and she chose us every single day, without hesitation, without regret, without holding back. She took strangers, women hurt by her son, and turned that pain into something beautiful. She paused, wiping away tears. 24 years ago, my mother brought me to the United States looking for answers, searching for the father I would never know. But what we found was far more valuable. We found Nonna. We found family. We found love. Sophia looked at Gabriella, who was crying in the front row. My mother is the strongest woman I know. She crossed oceans, faced painful truths, rebuilt her life over and over. But she didn't have to do it alone, because Nonna was there, always. She looked at Vanessa, Marianne, and Paula, and all the other women my grandmother gathered. You are my mothers too, in a way. You taught me different lessons, showed me different kinds of strength. You, along with Nonna, shaped me. Finally, she looked at Lucas, Michael, Claire, and little Richard. And my siblings. We're a strange family, no doubt, but we're a real family, united not by accident of birth but by conscious choice, as Nonna taught us. Sophia took a deep breath. Nonna asked me not to get stuck in the pain, to honor her memory by living well, and that's what I'll do. I'll become a human rights lawyer, as I've always dreamed. I'll fight for non-traditional families, for single mothers, for children who need support. I'll continue her work in new ways. And I won't do it alone. We'll do it together, as a family, because that's what she taught us. That alone we are strong, but together we are unstoppable. The crowd applauded through their tears, and when the funeral ended, when everyone had left, only the family remained. They sat in Eleanor's house in the garden she loved so much, sharing memories and comfort. She left letters, Gabriella finally said, bringing out the box, for each of us. They opened their letters individually, reading Eleanor's final words through tears and laughter. Each letter was perfectly personalized, capturing the essence of every relationship she had with each person. When Sophia opened hers, she found not just a letter but something else. A photo. The original photo of Richard and Gabriella in Rome, the one Eleanor had found in Richard's room years ago. So you always remember where you started, Eleanor had written on the back, but never forget how far you've come. Sophia held the photo carefully, looking at the father she never knew and the young, passionate mother she barely recognized. Mom, she called. Gabriella came to sit beside her. Were you ever angry at him? Sophia asked. At my father, for all the lies, for never coming back, for leaving us. Gabriella considered the question honestly. At first, yes, very angry. But over time I learned something important. Your anger only hurts you. And I couldn't stay stuck in that dark place because I had you. You needed a present mother, not a mother consumed by anger. And now, How do you feel about him now? Grateful, strangely, Gabriella admitted. Not for his choices, but for the consequences. He gave me you, and through you I found Eleanor. I found this family. I found my purpose. So yes, I'm grateful, even though the path was painful. Sophia hugged her mother. Nonna was right about you. You're the strongest person I know. We all are, Gabriella corrected. All the women here. We all survived. We all thrived. We all chose love over bitterness. In the weeks that followed, the family processed their grief individually and together. The center reopened with a new wing dedicated to Eleanor's memory. Gabriella fully took over the leadership, with Vanessa, Marianne, and Paula supporting her. Sophia began studying for the bar exam, determined to honor her grandmother's memory through her work. Lucas composed a symphony in tribute to Eleanor. Michael wrote a moving essay about her that was published in a national magazine. Claire dedicated her master's thesis to the family model Eleanor had created. And little Raphael, now understanding that his grandmother wouldn't return, planted a rose garden in her honor. Each color represented a person in the family: yellow for Sophia, white for Gabriella, red for Vanessa, pink for Marianne, orange for Paula, and a special silver rose for Eleanor. So she always has fresh flowers, he explained when he showed the garden to the family. Like she always brought to Daddy Richard's grave. The innocence and love behind the gesture broke everyone's hearts all over again, but it also healed them a little. 6 months after Eleanor's passing, the family gathered to inaugurate the new wing of the center. It was a beautiful space, full of light, with photos of Eleanor over the years covering one wall. But the centerpiece was a quote from her, in large letters: "Family is a choice we make every day. Choose love." During the opening ceremony, something unexpected happened. A young Italian woman appeared, carrying a baby. She looked nervous, almost ready to run away. Sophia saw her first, and something about the young woman's posture, the way she held the baby, was all too familiar. "Excuse me," Sophia said, approaching her. "Can I help you?" The young woman looked at Sophia with wide eyes. Are you Sophia? Sophia Romano?" "Yes," Sophia replied, confused. "How do you know my name?" "I'm Charlotte," the young woman said. "Charlotte Brown. And I think your father might be my baby's father too." Sophia's world stopped. "Not again, please, not again." The young woman opened her bag with trembling hands and pulled out papers. "I know how this sounds, but I have proof. Messages, photos, and—" She stopped, looking around at the family who had gathered upon noticing the commotion. "I didn't come for money. I came because my son deserves to know his family. He deserves to know he has siblings. And I read about you online, about how you came together despite everything. And I thought, maybe there's room for us too." Sophia looked at her mother. Gabriella looked at Vanessa, Marianne, and Paula. And in their eyes, instead of anger or frustration, there was only weary understanding. Because of course there was more. Richard had continued his pattern until the end. But there was also something else in that moment. A choice. The same choice Eleanor had made 24 years ago when she decided to welcome Gabriella. "Come in," Gabriella finally said, her voice surprisingly firm. "Let's talk. And if your son is truly my children's brother, then we'll figure it out together." Charlotte began to cry with relief. Thank you. I was so scared you would send me away." "We could," Paula said honestly. "We have every right to be tired of Richard's complications. But it's not about him," Sophia finished, understanding. "It's about the child. It's about family. It's about doing what Nonna would do." They moved the conversation to a private space. Charlotte told her story. It was painfully familiar. She met Richard on a business trip to Italy in the last months of his life, thought they had something special. He disappeared and she discovered the pregnancy after his departure. "I tried to track him down," she explained. "But then I found out that he was no longer here, and I thought about forgetting it, about raising my son alone. But then I found articles about you, about this incredible family that emerged from a similar situation, and I thought my son deserved this too. The DNA test was done, and as everyone already suspected, it confirmed that Charlotte's baby, a boy named Matthew, was another one of Richard's children. "How many more are there?" Marianne asked, not with anger, but with genuine curiosity. "How many other siblings are out there that we don't even know about?" "There might be more," Gabriella admitted, "but at some point we need to stop letting Richard's past choices dictate our present. We'll welcome whoever shows up, as Eleanor would have done, but we won't live our lives looking for more complications." "I agree," Paula said. "We've opened our doors, but we won't chase ghosts." Charlotte was integrated into the family as the others had been. It was a process, and not without its challenges. Some old wounds were reopened. There were difficult conversations and moments of tension, but in the end, they persevered. Because that was what Eleanor had taught. That family isn't about ease or convenience. It's about commitment. It's about showing up even when it's hard. 1 year after Eleanor's passing, the family organized a memorial celebration. Not a sad event, but a celebration of life. In the rose garden that young Richard had planted, now blooming gloriously. "Nonna once told me," Sophia said to the gathered family, "that legacy isn't what we leave to people, but what we leave in people, and she left so much in each of us." She looked around the circle. Gabriella, now 50 years old, still beautiful, still strong, running the company with confidence. Vanessa, happily married and working as head nurse at the center. Marianne, with her expanded family, leading the children's program. Paula, finally comfortable with vulnerability, helping countless mothers. And now Charlotte, the newest addition, finding her place. And the children, no longer children now. Sophia, a dedicated lawyer. Lucas, a renowned musician. Michael, a published author. Claire, a social worker. Richard, a promising student with a gentle heart. And little Matthew, just 1 year old, surrounded by more love than most children experience in a lifetime. "Let's make a toast," Gabriella proposed, raising her glass. "To Eleanor, to the woman who taught us that family is a choice, that love transcends blood, that healing is possible, that beauty can emerge from pain." "To Eleanor," everyone repeated. "And to Richard," Sophia added, surprising everyone. "Yes, he made terrible mistakes, but without him none of us would be here, none of this family would exist. So in a twisted and unintended way, he gave us each other. It was a perspective that took years to reach, a wisdom that only comes with time and healing. But there it was. Forgiveness. Not forgetting, but acceptance. Acceptance that Richard was who he was, and that despite his flaws, something beautiful had been born. "To Richard," they repeated, this time with less pain, more understanding. As the celebration continued, laughter filling the garden that Eleanor loved, Sophia looked up at the sky and smiled. She could almost feel her grandmother's presence, approving, smiling, proud of what they had built and maintained. "We did it, Nonna," she whispered. "We kept the promise. We kept the family together." A gentle breeze blew, making the roses sway, and Sophia chose to believe it was Eleanor responding. "I know, my dear. I always knew you could." In the following years, the family continued growing and evolving. Sophia married a fellow lawyer who accepted and loved her complicated family. Lucas toured the world, but always returned home for weekly dinners. Michael became a teacher, teaching about diverse family structures. Claire opened her own family therapy practice. Little Richard grew up knowing only love and acceptance, becoming exactly the kind of man his grandfather never was. Present, honest, kind. And the center expanded. Not just one location now, but 5 throughout New York City. Thousands of women and children helped. Countless families formed. All starting with an old lady who chose love over bitterness when an unknown Italian woman appeared crying in a cemetery. 10 years after Eleanor's passing, when Sophia was pregnant with her first child, she visited the grave for the first time in years. Beside her was her mother, Gabriella, now with silver hair, but eyes still bright. "She would have been so happy," Gabriella said, touching Sophia's belly. A great-granddaughter. I want to name her Eleanor, Sophia announced. If it's a girl. So the name continues. So the story continues. Gabriella smiled through tears. She would have loved that. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Sophia noticed something. Fresh flowers on the grave. Not just on Eleanor's, but also on the nearby grave. Richard's grave. Who still brings flowers for him? Sophia asked. I do, Gabriella admitted. Once a month. Not because he deserves it necessarily, but because he was part of my story. And without that story, I wouldn't have you. I wouldn't have this life. So I give thanks, in my own way. Sophia hugged her mother. You're amazing. I learned from the best. As they walked back to the car, Sophia thought about everything that had happened since that day 24 years ago, when her mother, desperate and alone, brought her to that cemetery looking for answers. They didn't find the answers they expected, but they found something much better. They found Eleanor, they found family, they found love. And that love had multiplied, creating ripples that touched hundreds, thousands of lives, turning pain into purpose, wounds into wisdom, strangers into family. That was Eleanor Thompson's legacy, not her money or her company, but her ability to see possibility where others saw only complication, to choose love where it would be easier to choose anger, to build bridges where others would build walls, and that legacy would continue. Through Sophia and her children, through every family member, passing on the lessons Eleanor had taught, through the center and the thousands of lives it touched. Eleanor might be gone, but she wasn't forgotten, and she never would be, because true love doesn't end with death. It transforms, multiplies, lives through the people we love and the choices they make. And this family, this strange and wonderful family, would make the right choice every day, forever. Because that's what Eleanor had taught. That family is a choice we make every day, and they would choose love. Always. End of story. Now tell us in the comments what you thought of this moving story. Where are you watching from? Do you believe Eleanor made the right decisions by welcoming all those women? Leave your honest opinion in the comments. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heart-touching stories.